notion of mathesis is very ambiguous because it could mean something very serious about the ta mathemata in Greek. It refers also to the idea of the cosmology, for Marin Mersenne, the idea of the universal harmony. I just will employ this to speak about the knowledge, very curious level of knowledge about computational architecture, referring mainly to logic and mathematics, but at different level to languages. What is curious is such kind of informal structure of knowledge, very dispersed between different disciplines. It could be mathematics, logic, computation, philosophy, or by accident architecture, and the idea of different fields of formalization. My presentation will go to define the idea of the program, playing with the idea of the program, an architectural program as programmé in Greek before the language, and to understand what are the sources for the different disciplines and what could be the crisscrossing point defining computational architecture. In this way, I tried to do it for myself, to organize a mapping, first surely of the tools, critical and philosophical tools, mathematical tools to understand what is computation. The second, of course, is to make the history of computational architecture, a kind of history, because I began to work on this field, beginning of the 90s, and now there is many historians, archaeologues, and specialists of history of computation I never met, but it's curious to me, and I thought to myself, why not to think about, not to make an history, I don't like such kind of authoritarian discourse, but why not to think about the idea of a mapping, to understand exactly what is the situation. And there is something which is very important for me, and I will speak about, is the recurrent concept of structure, which is never explained, crossing all the discipline. I'm interested by the displacement of concepts between the discipline, and of course, the idea of a possible recursivity of mathematical discourse, the idea to critique the mathematician, which are in their specialties, also logicians, but at the end, working on the complexity of mathematics, trying to explain their disciplines, they go back to very simple academic distinction between, it's absurd to me, you have a fabulous mathematician, and at the end, he came back to Plato, or to a kind of idealism, or realism, intuitionism, and it's absurd, because it's really the debates we had at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And if you read some texts about critique of mathematics today, about the foundation of mathematics, they are playing with such kind of categories which came before the phenomenology. And it's curious, very curious to me. L'Achronetum, for example, we explain at the end, after beautiful text about Aristotle and the movement, we explain at the end that he was a Platonician. And other question which interests me is, of course, the notion of rationalization. Nobody speaks about, but there is two kinds of rationalization, the rationalization before computation and after computation. There is the rationalization which begins with the Renaissance, and I'm very critical about the interpretation of the Renaissance as if it was not invented in the 19th century, the idea of perspective, the idea of the visual construction, and formalized by Cassirer, and now it's a kind of orthodoxy, and I'm very critical about this because the Renaissance is more complex. There is mainly two Renaissance. The first one with Alberti, of course. It's the Bible of architects, Vitruve, Alberti, all those kind of references. But there is also the second Renaissance, nobody wants to speak about, with Manierism, and it's not possible to assimilate Palladio, all people from the second Renaissance, to the first one. It's absurd. The scholar of Padoue about biology and so on, it's completely a different word dealing with morphology. And the last thing, of course, is the question of modernism. I don't like so much Bruno Latour. I think we are still modernists. But the idea is also remaining. What kind of modernism is bound to what kind of rationality? Close to Renaissance. For me, the beginning of the 20th century with a radical shift, with the apparition of the computational world, mainly after the Second World War. Such kind of questions are very determinant for me. And I will not speak about the main thing, it's the building information modeling. Because 30 years ago, when I spoke about computation in architecture, everybody was postmodern. You can see the building behind you. Everything was postmodern, and computation was something absurd. People thought that will never happen. It was a kind of a disorganization of the idea. Many people, professors of architecture of all the school of architecture in France, asked to their students not to go to Archilab. It could be a perversion of their mind. You know, changing the rules of the beautiful drawing, of the proportion, of the notion of the modernist composition. The notion of composition in architecture. 30 years after, all the people who never believe in computation are working with building information modeling. You know, pure rationally straight system, cataloging any elements of architecture. To work, to give me some sources, but it's mainly for me because it's a very complex situation. I try to understand what was this crisis of the foundation of mathematics. I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a logician, I'm not an epistemologist, and it was so a little bit complex for me to crisscross those references between, of course, the debate between intuitionism and formalism, between Brouwer and Hilbert, a pure idea of the formalist logic, and the introduction by Brouwer of the notion of intuition, which was, for me, absolutely seminal, and the debates between algebraic topology and functional analysis. It happened with end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, with the diversification of the geometry. And architects never accepted the fact that this diversity of this diversification of geometry. They are still, in an Euclidean word, of course, for the modernist and the postmodernist for sure, a little bit thinking about topology, for the most advanced about algebraic geometry, and that's it. And this is really a real problem. And the last one is the mutation of the status of the mathematical object. The idea of the eidos, and I was a student of the famous, completely unknown, but important for me epistemologist, Jean Toussaint de Santi, who wrote a beautiful book named The Mathematic Idealities, and it was in the 60s or beginning of the 70s, if I remember well. And the idea of the eidos, of the ideality, is still important in mathematics and recurrent until the notion of nominalism, and I will speak about. And also I want to speak about the ontology of space, and recurrent in mathematics, but also in phenomenology. The ontology of the number, of course, the famous triad with the Dedekind at the beginning, and intuitionist in opposition with the set theory. And surely in set theory, the notion of infinitary and combinatory logic. This is tools, it's just a little mapping. I don't want to go too far with this. The second thing which I'm interested in is the notion of constructivism. Through surely a critique of Zimmerloh-Fraenkel, Cantor and Zimmerloh-Fraenkel, and if you think about the fact that somebody like Badiou was permanently referring to Zimmerloh-Fraenkel to formalize his system, philosophical system, and his theory of numbers, and I will speak about, it's interesting to understand what it is. The second is the status of the logic as a formal language, of course, all the analytical philosophy, defined by an ontology of the number, and we can speak about, of course, Dedekind, but also all the word of the analytical philosophy. The second question is the question of the definition of the infinite in the set theory, the idea of the integration, well known by mathematicians, infinite and numbers, and the notion of ontology, all the different numbers which appear after the mutation of the crisis of mathematics, new kind of numbers, the Cantorian transfinite, imperial numbers, and also I'm very interested in the non-standard analysis, because it's a new kinds of number. It means that we have to reconfigure the notion of intuition, not the pure intuition coming from, of course, Kant, and Kant, Husserl, and so on, all the genealogy, how it was redefined in a way by Husserl through the phenomenology, through the notion of intuition and donation. And as you know, Husserl was a strong mathematician, a logician first, and of course the thinker of phenomenology. I'm interested also by the idea of the representative intuition by Brouwer through the notion of the dyads, and which opened for me a way for, opened for me, a way for a constructive mathematical objectivity, a new way to think objectivity against the traditional formalism. This is a construction, this constructivism redefined for me the mathematical object as a construct object with the possibility to read the process, and to go on one side and the other. The idea of reversibility in logic is very important in this way, and impose a new notion of structure. It opened the field to an objective constructivism, a recurrence dynamic of the construction of the mathematical object, and it opened question to the traditional structuralism and language of structuralism, and I will speak about, and open to the idea of a generative dimension, which is for me the main thing. Generative means, for me, creation. Generative and new relational grammar, and I will speak about Chomsky in a way. Of course, if we speak about computation, I don't want to make the full history of computation, going back to Pascal, La Pascaline, Leibniz, Charles Babbage, Ada Lovelace, and so on. The first woman was a programmer. The first programmer was a woman. It's interesting to understand, speaking about language. But surely we have to speak about Turing, Gödel, and Church, the main sources of the 30s. I can't, to be honest, have to define a complete overvision of the Vienna School, but it's important to know that Gödel, von Neumann came from the Vienna School. You know, and of course, the migration to America changed the rules, but there is a seminal anchoring of the computation and calculus in the Vienna School. It has to be explained. Turing, of course, the Turing machine, an absolute formalization, and of course, a simulation in a way, the operation of a simulation. Gödel with the calculable function, and Church, the lambda calculus, the idea of a reduction, which was in a way the opening of a kind of formal structuralism in a way, and I think it's important, the reduction of the writing, of the logic through a new kind of formalistic expression. It means that the constructive objectivity can be objectified at the same level than the logic itself. It's a new constructive level. It means that this is a structuralist vision, which could be hybrid with others I will speak about. And the calculus can be a constructive objectivity by itself. It's a simulation, and computation introduces immediately the notion of simulation, which have to be explained. And of course, at the end, this construction is not the calculus, and we can think about the idea of the notion of incompleteness for Gödel. Three keys for me I defined from those roots to read what I will speak about after. The recursivity, the idea through the notion of structure, the ability to read the process on both sides, to have a complete understanding of the chain. The recursive algorithm, of course, the factorization, compilation, and story, even for, I will speak about serial automata, even for the set theory. The notion of structure, and this is interesting to cross different levels. Of course, the roots of the French structuralism coming mainly from Husserl, and it's an unknown story. Of course, as you know, Husserl made a conference in La Sorbonne in the 30s named Cartesian Meditation, and it changed completely the field in France, and many teachers, which was the first generation of phenomenologists, like Jean Val, Jean Hippolyte, Cavaillès in mathematics, were absolutely stupefied by the vision of Husserl. And of course, those professors, Jean Val, for example, wrote the first text on Heidegger, the first course on Husserl for La Sorbonne, and he was the professor of Gilles Deleuze, Jacques Derrida, and so on, you know, and same thing for Lacan. All the generation of structuralists in France came from this filiation, and it's unknown. I will speak about Lévi-Strauss also. The second level, of course, is the critical structuralist, this generation, and I want, dealing about language, and I want to cross this with somebody forgotten today, but which is fundamental to understand computation. Chomsky, who was absolutely influential in the 60s for the first experiment in computation. And the last level, I don't know, surely a structuralist, French structuralist, close to people of it's a group but close to the people of this generation. Spoke about Derrida, Deleuze, and Lacan, and this beautiful text, absolutely accessible, not mathematic, and it's the reverse of my lecture, The Architecture of Mathematics. I like this title, and of course it deals with the notion of structure in mathematics, surely one of the first one. The second, of course, is the famous text of Dedekind about the theory of number. And the last one is a level which is unknown, I don't know why, because they are real structuralists, you know, all those people like Benacerraf, Hellman, Shapiro, working on the notion of patterns, a notion we'll see also in the computational world of architecture. And I like particularly Hellman because he wrote a beautiful text about the disparition of the numbers. And this is a kind of paradox. And now we can go through the history of computation in architecture. And I will begin with Darcy Thompson, because it's a reference for many architects working on morphogenesis. And it will be also a reference, you will see later, for an important theoretician. It's surely the idea to organize the parametry of morphogenesis. Surely it was mainly well known for this, even if it was the case in the 18th century with Lavater, for example. Many theoreticians worked on those notions along the 18th and 19th century. And of course, just after, to define the limits and the roots, began before the Second World War and just after the Second World War, those logicians which were close to the first tools of computation, the first big computer, immediately transfers their knowledge to the notion of morphology. This was, for me, very important. The first one about the analysis or the formalization of chemistry is by evidence Turing. Turing wrote only 5 texts in his life, only 5, and one of them is about morphogenesis and patterns, the definition of patterns on snails. And I don't remember where, it's somewhere near Australia, there is a guy, a chemist, who is the specialist of snails, and we classify something like 2,000 different patterns of snails, the same one, in this classification, the same one, and through, of course, the Turing formalization. Yeah, the snails. The second one, of course, is John von Neumann with Stanislav Ulam. I'm interested by the definition of what were the cellular automata, and the beginning of the work at the ENIAC. You have different computers which were created at the period. First, to understand the blow of the atomic bomb, it was the first work of John von Neumann, and the application immediately 5 years after on meteorology to define the morphogenesis of the stream of air, to understand exactly what could be the forecasting of the weather. Applied first on a little region, after on the department, a state, USA, and at the end on a world level. The notion of cellular automata is really, for me, very important because it opened, dealing with this idea of constructivism I spoke about, to the notion of the universal constructor, which is still effective today at the MIT. There are many people working on this. Cellular automata in 2D could be adaptive in 3D and so on, and we will see the further development with a software named Mathematica, a pure simulation tool. The other roots, speaking about architecture, is of course Norbert Wiener, not for this, because it's also an object, a cybernetic object, Pantomima, but because he had an important influence on Gordon Pask, a kind of crazy genius. He was Gordon Pask was in relationship with Wiener, and Gordon Pask invented the first spatial automated system for surely some theater play with robots in the 50s. Nobody believes that it could be possible, and he was a seminal person on the London scene at the period, building by himself some elements of some computers. And of course, he worked with an architect named Cedric Price, And it's important to know that Cedric Price was interested by computation. You see the notation by Gordon Pask for the distribution of space and the organization of space and also the network inside. They believe that it was possible to be interconnected and to transfer information in the building. And as you know, this beautiful project by Cedric Price, Fun Palace, was the model for Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers to define the Pompidou Center, which was what was a dream for Cedric Price, was at the end a reality with Piano Rogers. And what is interesting is the fact also that Cedric Price, with the Interaction Center, built in London the first computer center for people with a very generous idea of the network which was not existing at the period. The generator projector is absolutely fundamental also, and of course he tried to invent a tools to an architecture, a virtual architecture for distributed knowledge, which was seminal to understand what was at the end the Fun Palace. Another sources very well known, but not so well exploited by architects, the idea of the notion of the Bézier curve applied in industry for Renault first and for Citroën after. And on the left, you see the tools which were in use until the 60s to calculate a spline with some lead pieces to define exactly the curve of the spline. And Bézier, of course, with the B-spline, formalized this through computer, and it was the first application after him, because it was, of course, largely exploited in the car industry and after in the plane industry with CATIA, the sources of CATIA who came from Pierre Bézier. It was exploited, for example, for the fonts. For A to B, the fact you can change all the size of the font and preserving all the curves. It directly developed from the B-spline. Some other sources, but which are interesting to understand that computational architecture was existing before the 80s. William Fetter, working with computer, just a description of a shape, the first experiment in shape modeling, and Ivan Sutherland, who invents Sketchpad, the first computer you can write on the screen, you can write and define shapes on the screen. This is the first traditional history of computation. The second one is not so well known. It's on the London scene too, and which is for me absolutely determinant. In Cambridge, you had a guy named Maurice Wilkes. I'm sorry, the photograph from the left disappeared. Maurice Wilkes. And Maurice Wilkes worked with von Neumann on the ENIAC in United States, and he was in Cambridge in London. And he dealt with the university the construction of the first huge computer with the program Titan, which is still at work, program Titan, in 65. And he was very close friend to another guy which disappeared on the left, Leslie Martin, Sir Leslie Martin. And Leslie Martin was a very interesting architect, brutalist, because in the 30s he was part of the group Circle. All the artists coming back from Germany, like Marcel Breuer, for example, a long list of artists, and he was in between this world of creation, he was architect himself, and this world of computation. And of course, this magazine, this issue of Circle, this is a catalog, is named International Survey of Constructive Art. And Martin did his best to integrate a computer in this building with the complicity of Maurice Wilkes. And it came as the first platform for computational architecture in the world at the period. And it's interesting to see that the first development came, it's not the first one, but came with Lionel March and Philip Stedman dealing with Chomsky language about generative grammar in architecture. And this is fundamental because on one way they interpreted all the classical architecture, for example Palladio, and on the other side, through generative grammar, and on the other side, they develop a generative modelization, which appeared later in the 70s with the shape grammar organized by Georg Stieny and Anne Paul Coates. But at Cambridge, at the same period, you had a guy teaching who was Colin Rowe. And Colin Rowe, as you know, worked this beautiful text named The Mathematics of the Ideal Villa, comparing, through generative grammar, Chomsky language, comparing the design of the Palladio and the design of Le Corbusier, to explain that you have invariance, an obsession of mathematicians, the discovery of invariance through ages, in between Renaissance architecture to modern architecture. And the main scholar at the period of Colin Rowe was a guy named Peter Eisenman, who began in Cambridge, London, leaving to make his PhD in the United States. And the PhD is about the formal basis of modern architecture, entirely defined at the period through the shape grammar, the linguistic approach of Chomsky. And nobody knows, but it was fundamental to understand the following of the suit of the story. The other students, beginning his PhD, was Christopher Alexander, and it's interesting to know that Alexander and Eisenman compete to define what could be the architectural language or a urban language formalized through generative grammar. And also, at the end, Christopher Alexander went to the United States to make his PhD in 1963, same date than Eisenman, about the pattern language. The notion of the pattern appeared directly from computation and from generative grammar. And this graphic design is absolutely fundamental because it's a scheme to understand all the work of Alexander on urbanism between a centralized city, a decentralized city, and a distributed city. And this is absolutely fundamental, this idea of the pattern, the organization, the structural organization of the grammatic language. And I'm sorry, all the image disappear, but the third one, who were in Cambridge at the period, was William Mitchell, the founder of the MIT laboratory with Negroponte, and he was also in Cambridge, and he worked also at the beginning on the form and grammar, like Christopher Alexander. Negroponte, of course, MIT lab, the architecture machine group, first design close to Sketchpad. You know, this is a pure Sketchpad design. It's just a description of shape, first shape modeling. But this beautiful project named Seek, absolutely fundamental because it's the first time architects deal with cellular automata 3D modeling. You know, with these cubes, like in Fair, you can pick up a little object, and they display cube in a pure rationalist way, and you have not rats, but I don't remember those kind of animals. Gerbills? Sorry? Yeah, gerbills, disturbing the rationalist system. It was a very curious idea of Negroponte, but Negroponte was the founder of the MIT lab. It was not completely nothing. And the disciple of Gordon Pask came just after. The main disciple of Gordon Pask in London was also in Cambridge at the period, John Fraser, who worked mainly on serial automata, but in the middle of the 90s, beginning of the 80s, he was very influential of contemporary architect, Fraser, with this idea of the evolutionary architecture. He works on serial automata. Now the question is about structuralism in architecture. It means formalization. And it appeared very early. I just quote, I think he was outside of this, but I just quote like Fuller. It's interesting to see the comparison between this drawing of 27 and drawing of 61. You know, he anticipated this idea of formalization. But the main influence coming also from the London scene, because in Cambridge, the professor of Cambridge were very influential on two persons in London, close to the independent group, Allison and Peter Smithson. And also they work on the idea of the grammar and the idea of the disorganization of the plan, of the modernist plan. And all the structure of Team 10 was influenced by language and structuralism. And it's easy to understand now, it's a pure computational architecture without computer. But the problem is that it was built built for Erzberger with the Orphanage, one the most complex project, most interesting project here. Aldo van Eyck, the Orphanage, Erzberger, sorry, Allison and Peter Smithson. They tried exactly like Christopher Alexander to organize a distributed architecture. And after, of course, Piet Bloem or Moshe Shavdi, this project above is built in the center of Rotterdam. It's not a fiction, it's realistic. You can see it with cubes, reversed cube. And it's purely computable. You know, it came from grammar, the Shep grammar at the beginning, and realized in this way. Same thing with Doxiadis. Doxiadis was an incredible crux or genius, as you want. In the 60s, 50s, he planned a kind of formalization of urbanism at a large scale for India or Africa, and playing with NATO, he organized a kind of scenario. He rent a big apartment. He paid people to have desks to explain to NATO that he will be the first to develop computational architecture. And at the end, NATO paid for, I don't know, but £3 million, the computer. And he was the first to experiment through acoustics, a real computational mapping in the same way at a very large scale for urbanism in India and Africa. Now we can speak about codes and notation. And there is also a very important history we can go through dealing with architecture. I'm still speaking about architecture. I'm sorry about this narrative development of the lecture. But of course, the Philips Pavilion was determinant because it was done fully, completely by Yannis Xenakis. The musician who was a pure mathematician and who developed a system of notation for the drawing of the Xenakis Pavilion, dealing with the electronic poem of Varèse, the music you have inside the pavilion. Varèse was not turned to computation and mathematics, but it was done really by Xenakis. The idea of the formalized music, and beginning of the 60s, of course, the fact that surely Xenakis was the first to use groups like Lie group, in music to define the notation in music. Here you have from 56, Acoripsis, it's a beautiful drawing, very early, made by at this moment, and some are lost here. It's all the application about computation in the different disciplines, because in the middle of the 60s, some university, the main university, bought a huge computer, and some creators got an access, artists, writers, or architects. And here you have some example. And here the first exhibition devoted to computation and creation by Jachar Eichardt in London, Cybernetic Serendipity, the computer and the arts, where you had architects, musicians, writers working on generative computation. Another one, like Leonardo Mosso, absolutely fundamental, was the first to invent the idea of the computational city. And some of the artists we dream about, but without any access to computer, like Andrea Bronzi, he made a computer drawing with a type machine, but it was his own possibility at the period. Or Dennis Crompton from Archigram, the beautiful drawing of computer city. The notation was also developed, of course, in music. And in dance, Trisha Brown, for example, and of course Merce Cunningham at the same period. The first, Merce Cunningham was one of the first to work on with computer at the period. And now I want to speak about real structuralism. The structuralism everybody knows. The structuralism was at work in architecture since 20 years. The French structuralism, or post-structuralism for the American. The main influence was the influence of Lévi-Strauss, and the invention of the structure to understand the parenthood. As you know, Lévi-Strauss never traveled one time, but he made a notation about all the structure of the filiation in different countries, all over the world, through ages, and at the end classified structure and understood that it was possible to formalize any filiation all over the world. And it was the invention of structuralism. It was very influential on a young writer at the period named Roland Barthes. In this first issue of Communication, he published the first text on structuralism of architecture, and the idea of the zero degree of writing. It means no expression, but only structure. You can define as invariance through literature, possibility to read Balzac or to read Zola, and to define the internal structure of the text you could compare with a different period. This was the idea, a way to erase expressionism in literature. And the magazine Tel Quel, which was very influential, developing such kind of ideas through what was the semiology in literature. And the guy was very influenced by French structuralism. The first one was an architect named Bernard Tschumi, and he was in Paris at the period, and he made curiously this project, completely unknown, do-it-yourself architecture, dealing with computation, without computer, of course, and there is this phrase I like a lot, how your phone plug could be a computer plug. It was in '69. Now it's evident. And what is interesting is the fact that Tschumi was fascinated by Cedric Price and by Gordon Basque, and went in '71 to London to work with Cedric Price. And Cedric Price told him, I have no work. And he became professor at the AA, Architectural Association. But he stayed with Price, and it was fundamental for him to think about computation. And in this way, it's possible to cross the structuralist influence on Tschumi on Tel Quel, the idea of the notation and writings, and the computational influence, which will be very determinant to understand what will be in the beginning of the 90s, the paperless studio, when Tschumi became dean of the Columbia University. This idea of the notation here, through those projects, was absolutely efficient for other architect. Another one, you don't know, but Roland Barthes was also very influential on Marxist architect, and they cross Adornian from Adorno influence to the structuralist understanding of architecture. And the main architect who did that was Aldo Rossi. Through this, before Aldo Rossi, through those two little booklets, very important, he did for the students, quite unknown. This one, l'analisi urbana e la progettazione architettonica, and the second one, the first one, dealing with morphologia and typologia. The invention of typomorphology, structuralist language applied to architecture, what will be at the end postmodern architecture, and all the schools of architecture in Europe developed such kind of experiment in postmodern in typomorphology. And here you have the first drawing made with the students here by Guazzoni, to all those students, all those drawings. I will tell you that I purchased everything. I purchased those drawings, and they reappear from nowhere. But they are purely structuralists, working with grid, critical grid, against the traditional plans of city. The influence of French structuralism was also determinant on an Italian writers named Umberto Eco, who wrote the first book, La strutture accente, the accent structure, the idea of dealing with the same idea of structuralism and dealing also with semiology. And nobody knows, but Umberto Eco was the student of Enzo Pacci, who was the first phenomenologist in Italy, influenced by Husserl and the translator of Husserl. And you have perfect filiation. Now you can cross the links between different levels of formalization between structuralist language and structuralism in mathematics and morphology. And this structural-Marxism appear, of course, through those different magazines. Of course, Angelus Novus, the influence of Benjamin, of Walter Benjamin, was determinant. It was the year of lead, the years of lead. The period of terrorism in the 60s and 70s. And of course, you had radical Marxism with Quadrini Rossi. Contropiano was the famous magazine with Manfredo Tafuri as the architect who rereads through typomorphology the architecture of Renaissance and the architecture of modernism in the same way, a structuralist understanding with a Marxist input. And of course, the influence of Italian was determinant, but also on Ungers. You have the same typological and morphological approach It was computing without computer, the same morphological approach in the work of Purini, completely close to Rossi, and in the work of Ungers. And as you know, Ungers was the master of Koolhaas. Slowly, you can reconstruct the affiliation and see that the structuralism was absolutely strong. And another source, which is for me absolutely fundamental, is the fact that Colin Rowe, who published the book, The Mathematic of the Ideal Villa, went to the United States and prepared the first exhibition on the New York Five at the MoMA, and he made the catalog, College Row, of course, entirely organized around Eisenman, purely shape grammar at the period. This idea of a critical modernism, purely shape grammar. And the second phase was here the fact that, of course, that Eisenman was also influenced by Italian. You know, he went to the famous exhibit. No, he never came. But Meyer and Michael Grave came to the famous exhibition on the Triennale of Milano in 1973, met the Italians, you know, and the link between the two schools happened. And of course, it was the apparition of the famous magazine Opposition, where you can cross the structural-Marxist on one way and the shape grammar on the other way. Understand what was structural-Marxist and typomorphology in architecture. The idea of deconstruction will come after, but in the same filiation. The New York Five, this famous exhibition, you know, critical of modernism, and just after, the influence of Derrida on Eisenman through Tchoumi. Tchoumi was the first to meet Derrida because he was close to Telquel, to the magazine. He went to see Philippe Solers. He met Derrida when he organized the competition of La Villette. And he was fascinated, and along the first level of the competition failed, and after, Derrida, I have the letter, wrote a letter to Tchoumi and asked him, could you introduce me to Mr. Derrida, please? And it was middle of the 80s, and at the period, 83, 84, and at the period, Derrida, I don't know a word about Derrida. Just imagine what was this kind of critical structuralism. And this is important to know what happened with deconstruction, with the famous exhibition at the MoMA in 1988, completely over-determined by structuralism and deconstruction. A misunderstanding about deconstruction, because deconstruction is never deal with space. It's impossible to, it's an ontological abstraction, the spatiality for Derrida, nothing to do with the objective space. And of course there is beautiful text, critical text against Eisenman in the book named Suke by Derrida. You can read. The three others, completely on the influence of French structuralism at the period, were at the AA, under the presence of Tchoumi, Koolhaas, influenced by Ungers, and at the end Zaha, which were close also to those two architects, was the seminal group of the AA at the period. First experience, and this is the intelligence of Eisenman, he understood from the 60s and from his experiment in London that the development of typomorphology could be more efficient with a computer. And he worked with an engineer named Chris Yesios, and they developed together the software named FormZ, which is truly one of the first specific modeler developed for creative architecture at the period. And the first works he did came from his analysis, like this, of building from Terragni, the famous Italian architect, Giuseppe Terragni, in the magazine Perspecta in 1977. And beginning of the 80s, he put in shape FormZ, and it was the beginning of the computational architecture as experiment in United States. All the students of Tchoumi at the Columbia used as a software FormZ. It was the first software in use at the period for them, but not for the other. And this is another possible origin. We saw the origin of the Cambridge School, 60s, second origin, beginning of the 80s, Columbia University. Sorry for the missing drawings. And of course, 90s, a complete development of the work of Eisenman in computation, working at this level with Katia, on Maya, sorry, with Maya. And by accident, another architect who was absolutely not a computer guy, but this was really an industrial accident. He working as a craftsman with wood, with boxes in cardboard, and with some piece of clothes. But designing a very complex building, a guy from the studio told him, you could use a software used in aeronautic and aviation industry. This is CATIA. It could be very useful to define the shapes. And they use it just to computerize the curves at the beginning with an arm, and just from as a shape modeler, just they did that. But of course, the first building built with a computer in architecture, using plane industry, was this famous fish in Barcelona for the Olympic Games. It's why it's possible to see an origin between Eisenman and Gehry, an origin of computational architecture, and with further development, of course, with the famous building Bilbao. But the most important one for the experiment in computation was the Lewis House. 10 years of experiment, an enormous price of studies, and at the end, the client refused to build the house. Second level, the disciple of Peter Eisenman, working with typomorphology, always the same thing, was Greg Lynn, working curiously with B-spline from Bézier. You see the curve. And the embryological house is a new kind of topology. Playing with generative architecture, it's possible now to, through morphogenesis, to have a complete evolution of all the different shapes and at the infinite, and to produce the shape. It was mold at the period, just mold. But of course, the notion, the structuralist idea of typomorphology was still at work for the work of Greg Lynn. You see those works. Same thing with Hani Rashid. We are close to him working with FOMSI. And here you have a atypical guy named Bernard Cash. Because Bernard Cash, when he was 25, he made his PhD with a philosopher quite known named Gilles Deleuze, working on, at the period, Gilles Deleuze working on Le Pli. And he was a mathematician, an architect, and a philosopher. And at the end, an industrial. And he developed for the first time the idea of the file to factory. And as a computer guy, he was a scripter for a software named TopSolid, a modeler before Rhino. Rhino is well known, before Rhino, named TopSolid. And he made shape, but he was able at the period in the 80s, beginning of the 90s, to drive robots from the software. It was the first one to do it, who did that with a 3-axis, 4-axis, 5-axis machine, and to make those beautiful pieces of wood. I published the book myself in French. It was published at the MIT the same year. And the idea of the diagram appeared, and I produced also this work in 2002, which was exhibited in non-standard architecture. But what is interesting here is the fact that Cash was the first to deal with Deleuze with another roots in mathematics. Deleuze was mostly influenced by Bourbaki and by Albert Lotman. It's another affiliation completely outside from the American, and he produced those kind of panels, beautiful at the period. It was imagined it was in 1998, and nobody believed that it was possible to work in this way from file to factory. Here it became, computational architecture came as something very trendy. Some philosophers like Delanda, even Michael Hayes, who was a postmodern, Kipnis, and so on, began to write on computational architecture. And many other architects, working quite all of them with Maya, developed research on morphogenesis at the period. This building, this architecture was built in Lille, yes. And of course, all the development in architectural design would make computational architecture very trendy. At this period, I published this text, and this is a curious text about the spatial metaphor in French philosophy. It was very curious to me, this exploitation of negative ontology. The idea is that all the French architects in structuralism refuse the idea of spatialization as an ontological base, the idea of inscription, but develop negatively an incredible system of metaphor dealing about space to define the being. The being is not identity is a frayage, a sillage, a plateau, an incredible vocabulary also in poetry. You can find this in René Char, all the people influenced by structuralists in the 50s and 60s, and at a certain moment to explain that it was impossible to define the being as an identity, but just as a shift, as a separation, as something, an instantiation, and at the end the philosopher made a drawing. He was obliged to make a drawing to spatialize this negative idea of ontology. And this was very curious to me because this failure coming from the Heideggerian idea of the quadriparty, the structure of disposition of the being, was the mistake which makes that deconstruction exists at the end as objective architecture. It was bound to this unsolved idea of spatial ontology in French philosophy. At this period, I made this exhibition, Non-Standard Architecture, and I will tell you why in a moment. This is a Poincaré model from the Poincaré Institute. It was the cover. I didn't know so much. I was, of course, interested by this idea of topology, crossing not only mathematics, but also the artists, many artists working at the period on topology and morphology, many architects. And I made this exhibition, Non-Standard exhibition, Non-Standard the show, and with this ribbon, like in a fluid, with a complete archaeology or morphology in architecture against modernism, postmodernism, and so on, through ages. It was possible to see absolutely many seminal buildings in the history of architecture completely pushed away by the postmodern. Like Saarinen, for example, it was not existing. It was as if it was accident. But of course, if you go through, it's possible the perfect coherence of those architects, engineers, mathematicians working together to define new morphologies in architecture. I group all the architects of my generation, 12 crazy paranoiac, and of course very ambitious, very aggressive, and the object was to define for them exactly 45 meters square, not a centimeter more for one of the other. And I refused to make a grid. And it was a great problem, how to have a fluid spatiality, not making a grid, and to have exactly 45 meters square for each architect. And working, I found a young, this is the exhibition, yeah, blah, blah. I found a young architect who worked with me at the period, and desperate, we went to the Poincaré Institute, and we met two mathematicians, Mr. and Mrs. Tessier, and they told us, oh, there is a software which could do that, a software named Mathematica. And it was very curious to us because when we made the show, those drawings were made with Mathematica, this is the setting of the exhibition, all the architects worked in geometry with Modeler, and the own project working in the most advanced way was the setting of the show working with Mathematica. And it was a complete contradiction. It's why the title of the exhibition came as Non-Standard Architecture for two reasons, dealing about cellular automata, and for another reason I will explain, working with on the sources of Abraham Robinson. It was not well known at the period, but it's interesting to know that he worked with infinite number. This is interesting, 99999. And when Gödel became mad, he thought that the only person which could replace him in Princeton was Robinson. And it was really important for me because the other source for Robinson was to be a kind of inspire a famous mathematician, famous for me, surely also for the mathematician named George Reeb. And George Reeb was the professor of René Thom. And I was very interested by this filiation. And the other thing was the game about standard and non-standard, standardization, modernism, and non-standard, to make something more rationalized, more objective, more formalistic with the non-standard analysis and Mathematica, and of course to play the idea of the non-standard, and at the period a little bit some romanticism about the non-philosophy of Laruelle I worked with at the period. Sorry. What does it mean, non-standard architecture? It means 5-2 factory. It was the first demonstration. In the show, you had the first 3D printer in the show of architecture, and I remember at the period, many people told me it will never exist, it's not possible, the materials are not effective, you can't print steel, you can't print any kind of material, it will never exist. It exists a little bit now. And of course, the idea of the formalization, this critique of the linguistic scheme, which was preserved in the French philosophy, it was very important for me to deal with this at the period, to escape from this idea, which was still bound to postmodernism, and those ideas, those spatial metaphors, which were very ambiguous, dealing with space, diagram, fold, form, blob, blah, 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 and so on. And it was important to displace this vocabulary and to go back to the sources of the morphogenesis. And at the period, of course, I was interested by those sources. And to understand that for Deleuze, Bourbaki and Lautmann were very important for him to define his notion of differential topology first and algebraic topology, which are at work somewhere in his work. The second thing, completely unknown but very important, is this famous magazine published by the Normal School in Paris named Cahiers pour l'analyse, and the famous issue on formalization where Badiou published his first text on number and developing his relationship to set theory. You have to know that Badiou was a scholar of Althusser, pure Marxist, in the filiation, structuralist and Marxist, structuralist Marxist, I forgot in my list, but structuralist Marxist, and Badiou just came after, and this magazine, Cahiers pour l'analyse, was fundamental because at the period you had the students of the Normal School, and some professors were there, like Foucault and so on, around all the big names were around this magazine. He developed the concept de modèle, the famous about the modelization, surely one of the first texts published at the period in this way, in philosophy, and the famous book on the numbers. The second source for me was, of course, René Thom. I like a lot the book of René Thom because it was published like Lautmann as a pocket book. And I was 18 years old, and it was better not to have Jean-Paul Sartre in your hand to go to the cafe, but to have Modèle mathématique and morphogenèse. It was more effective, even if it was impossible to read. And of course, this famous second book, Structural Stability and Morphogenesis, dealing with structure and morphogenesis. And I was also interested by another source named by Barry Smith, the idea of the formal ontology, because Barry Smith is forgotten, but he made his PhD in the first book on Brentano, and working on the source of Husserl, trying to displace the roots of phenomenology to a formalism. And this idea of formal ontology was interesting to me, even if it's very positivist and in a way quite against. And at the end, you have all the system-oriented object. I'm not speaking about Graham Harman, I'm speaking about the oriented object system in technology everywhere in the world, could be validated by formal ontology. And of course, the source of George Reeb, the famous book of George Reeb, non-standard analysis of Robinson, and the references to cellular automata. This was the platform I tried to work with. Okay, just to explain what I explained, the refuse of the Cora, the interpretation of Derrida of the Cora, about spatialization, the idea of the new way to understand the geometrization of the morphogenesis, and a refuse of the idea of inscription and identity of inscription in architecture. What was interesting to me when I read this text about Claude Lévi-Strauss, he was in an interview in a magazine in 1999, and a journalist asked him, Didier Ribon, he asked him, Mr. Derrida, tell us what was the story of morphogenesis, of structuralism. What was the story of structuralism? Of course, you work with Ferdinand de Saussure, the famous linguist. And Lévi-Strauss said, no, absolutely not. The book I read at the period was Darcy Thompson about morphogenesis. And it was quoted, this interview was quoted by Jean Petitot, and I was absolutely fascinated by this. The source of the French structuralism, Claude Lévi-Strauss, was not directly inspired by language in the linguistic way, Ferdinand de Saussure as a reference, but by morphology, by morphogenesis. And this is absolutely fundamental, and Petitot, of course, the disciple of René Thom, referred to this in the same way. Of course, the idea of the hyperreal number, the logical foundation of the infinitesimal, and the famous development of the theory of catastrophe, which is very ambiguous because it could be read as morphogenesis formally as object. It's not. It's purely mathematic. But the way René Thom is thinking his own mathematics is absolutely fascinating, you know, and it's why it was possible for Petitot to develop a kind of a general aesthetic in terms of philosophy from the work of René Thom. I'm looking for models because I know that René Thom made models in plaster. I never seen. I'm looking for them because I was really fascinated by this idea that he tried to reconfigure this idea of catastrophe with physical objects, but I never seen them. But I know they are existing. And this seminar, this symposium was for me very important. It was organized after a first one, surely framed by Barry Smith, named Parts and Moments. And Jean-Michel Salanskis, I knew at the period, I also published a book by him, told me, read the symposium Parts and Moments. It's a new way to understand phenomenology. And some years after, 4 years after, this symposium appeared, and for me it was a real turning point because it was possible not to think formalism in terms of positivist way. It was, surely for Barry Smith, but dealing with Petitot and Thom, and I saw some text by a person I don't know, I didn't know at the period, Giuseppe Longo was there, but also Francesco Barella. And I understood that the idea of naturalization, which does not go back to nature, it was an idea of the production, a productive idea, a constructive idea of the naturalization, came as effective through mathematics, logic, in this symposium, and the idea to reread phenomenology in a new way with surely a new vision of structure and structuralism. It means the last step is about the development of the side of the new idea of mathesis and ontology, the ontology of the manifold. Very trendy today, the filiation of Badiou, developing this idea of the new materialism, the archifossile, the possibility to understand an archaeology of the earth and a kind of a theosophy of Badiou, which is absolutely incredible. The Marxists came as a theosophe at the end, and the beautiful text is a very nice writer, I like the work, by Quentin Miliassou, all the movement of speculative realism working with the theory of manifold. I was interested by the way Badiou changed his mind and going from set theory to category theory, and he organized in end of the 90s 2 symposiums, very close, with 10 persons, about the topoi, trying to save himself from the material, trying to create a new level through the category theories in his rationalist, in a way, rationalist vision. Of course, Gilles Deleuze, the theory of the manifold, also with through the differential calculus, the axiomatic and so on. The idea of the conversion in the work of Deleuze are really interesting. And here you have books which are absolutely determinant. Of course, Badiou about the manifold, Le Pli. Uriah Sinaker was surely invented a new theory of models, I think very determinant in this way, with a great influence of Salanskis. And this symposium, absolutely determinant for me, like naturalizing architecture, labyrinth of the continuous, where you have different texts trying to rethink the notion of discretization. And curiously, this text about Deleuze, which was not so stupid for an American, Virtual Mathematics, which was quite well written and with an intelligent interpretation of Deleuze. And at this moment, I was fascinated by new levels of formalization, cellular automata, of course, the Voronoi diagram, and it appears immediately at this period against the traditional shaped modeling, a new way to understand materiality. It was the case, for example, Crystal Rock, it was made by physician, Phyllis Automata. It was printed in the 90s, the analysis of the snowflakes and so on, the core curve, new system, new level, and of course, the apparition of Mathematica with Wolfram, and the idea of the non-standard. And at this moment, I discover the Santa Fe School, which was understood as like a little bit a fake thing at the period, so not realistic, not real scientist, but of course the work of Stuart Kaufman and Hofstadter in the Santa Fe School, all the symposium, and I was very surprised to discover through the work of Melanie Mitchell, the notion of non-standard coming back through artificial system and through the idea of artificial. It was very surprising for me, and I tried to understand, and slowly I began to read those texts. And the idea of the generic simulation appeared to me as important, and also in different disciplines, synthetic biology, for example, this one, in physics, in chemistry, the idea of simulation, of generative simulation, working with agents, working with swarm intelligence, came as a tool, a creative tool. And of course, the idea of the modelization of generative data structure came as important for some architect. And, sorry, what I did, sorry. Well, this was the way I worked with a new generation of architects, dealing with new kind of software, scripting themselves, mainly Alessandra Sec. I produced those works at the period, working with agents, Casares, and it was for me the way to develop an idea of a new constructivism and what I name an ecophysic in architecture, which could be also a production tool for nature. The idea is that nature is not something you have to simulate, but you can produce. It could be bound to biotechnology, and the way it could be also about politics, economy, the fact that we will have to produce nature at the end through simulations and generative system. And the last question was the question of the ontology, and of course it's impossible for me to bind it to a system of inscription. What was the fact for all the structuralists? Impossible to bind it to any kind of system of structure. I was thinking about the ontologist of structure, the logic of structure, like the universal logic, the modal logic, and I was a student also of Jean Vigardi's, the famous logician about modal logic. But but I tried to understand what could be this ontology, and at the end it came to me as something very Deleuzian and very Nietzschean, thinking that the ontology was in the delay and on the becoming. It's a permanent repetition. It has to be and work in the displacement. Yes. Thank you.